Hello, and welcome to another episode of Is It Just Me with Jess and Luke, the podcast that is dedicated to your unpopular opinion. And if you haven't noticed, we're doing this live today. So prepare for some mistakes, some slip ups, probably. Well, we're going to keep that to a minimum as much as possible. But as you know, this podcast is all about your unpopular opinions. So we want you to get involved today as much as possible. Make sure you're chatting and letting us know what you think as we move through the show. As always, I am joined by my wonderful co host, Luke Smith, who, if anything like me, I'm a little bit exhausted by all the news we've had this week, Luke. I don't know how you're feeling. We've had actual F1 news.
I know, it's been incredible. I can't actually remember many weeks busier during my time in Formula One than this week. It has been crazy over the last few days, from getting that first email at 11 o'clock at night on Monday saying this is going to happen, and we're like, whoa, we've got to move into action, and then just all the dominoes that have fallen since then. But it's why I love this job to pieces. You're trying to piece everything together, work out what's happening, and it's all out in the open today. We've had everything confirmed, but obviously the centerpiece of all of that, and the biggest news being Sebastian Vettel will be leaving Ferrari at the end of the year. It's really, I think, set things into motion, and made for a very, very busy but very rewarding week for the F1 community.
Absolutely. And with that news breaking, as you've said, has provided us with some wonderful content to talk about. So, of course, we're going to carry on that theme of talking about Vettel and Ferrari. So if you're sick of it, I'm really sorry, guys at home, but we're going to carry on because on the back of the news came some brilliant unpopular opinions. And I think a lot of the chats and maybe what we were talking about a lot of this week on our own channels is kind of, who's going to take the seat, which obviously, as you've said, has been revealed finally today after much speculation. But no one's actually been talking very much about Vettel, I feel. Like all the chat has been about, okay, well, yeah, obviously he's off. So today's unpopular opinion comes from at Andy_North, who says, is it just me, or is Seb's departure from the Scuderia overdue for some time? And Andy's actually sent us in a voice note to back up this tweet. So why don't we take a listen to what he has to say in total?
Is it just me, or has Seb's departure from the Scuderia been overdue for some time, wasting his chances in 2017, 18 and 19 of enacting his wet dream of winning championships in red, like his compatriot idol, whilst being usurped yet again by a younger, faster teammate? He had every opportunity of winning the championship in 2017 and 18, but threw it away with silly, almost rookie-level mistakes and crashes. In 17, he finished the season just 46 points behind Lewis. Were it not for his road rage in Baku and the spectacular turn 1 crash in Singapore, he'd probably have won the championship. What followed in 2018 wasn't a reversal of the mistakes, crashes and petulant behaviour. It was a season full of failed overtakes, shunts with other drivers, and admittedly some poor strategy from his team. This led to a widening gap between him and Lewis in the standings, hardly befitting of a world champion, let alone a 4-time title holder pushing hard for his 5th. In interviews he comes across as a genuinely likeable and funny guy, and F1 will be all the poorer for his departure. But I do feel it's right for him to call time on his stint in the red car. Whether he leaves the sport altogether or runs around in the midfield is his choice. I just can't help but feel it's a sad end to an illustrious career.
What do you think about that, Luke?
It's pretty spicy, yeah. I think that touches on all of the criticism that has been put Sebastian Vettel's way, I think, over the past couple of years, and let alone leading up to this announcement. I think Andy's correct. There were a string of errors through 2017, 2018, 2019 that I think we'll get onto in more detail later in the show. And that has really sort of laid the foundations for, I think, this departure, that ultimately he never did get the dream of emulating Michael Schumacher and being the man who could bring glory back to Maranello and win a world championship with Ferrari. That was always the dream. That was always, I think, what everyone expected to happen when he moved there in 2015. And 2017, 2018, there were huge opportunities for him. I think 18 especially, in my opinion, I think that was the year that Ferrari had out and out the quickest car, and I think Vettel should have won the title that year. But there were just too many errors, and ultimately it all backfired, and that's kind of led to a very slippery slope that's ultimately led to his departure. I think, it's been an interesting story and an interesting sort of demise, I guess, in one kind of way. But I think we can't forget that this is a 4-time world champion and still an outstanding Grand Prix driver. So it's it's a tough take though, very tough take to say that he's been overdue his exit from Ferrari.
It is indeed. And I guess, as you've pointed out, I think a lot of people are feeling you had your shot, Seb, and we've not had it. But there are two people in a relationship, right? And the two people we've got in this relationship is Vettel and then there's Ferrari. So why don't we take a little trip down memory lane? Why don't we refresh ourselves in terms of what it is that Vettel's achieved in his career and maybe some of the mistakes that he's made along the way. And maybe we can come to some kind of agreement as to whether this statement from Andy is a fair statement or if it's completely and utterly off. And as always, guys, in the comments, make sure you're getting in that chat. We're reading the chat as we're going along and we'll be reacting to your questions or your statements. So why don't we start considering where we are? So the key talking points, as you've pointed out, is Seb's run of performance, the fact that he has been outperformed by a younger teammate in that car, and obviously Leclerc's only had one season in that car, and he's already looking a bit like the shining light for Ferrari at this point in time. We've obviously got the Spinala memes and comments that have been following that poor man around wherever he goes. But I mean, is it justified? So we've got a little clip from an @_Uzaya Saeed_. So why don't we take a little listen to what he has to say?
I think Sebastian Vettel left Ferrari at the right time because he was outscored last year by Charles Leclerc, who was only 21 years old. He was brand new to the team. People expected Sebastian Vettel to beat him. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. He lost to what was essentially pretty much a rookie, which was a surprise to many. And from that point onwards, I didn't really see any point in Vettel continuing with the team. And I only thought that his reputation would be further damaged if he decided to continue, because I'd expect Leclerc to beat him again. So it wouldn't really make any sense for Vettel to continue. So I do think Vettel left Ferrari at the right time, and I expect Vettel to retire from the sport. He's got a wife and kids. He's a 4-time world champion. He's achieved everything that is possible in the sport. He's one of the greatest of all time, and I'm sure he's got other things on his mind, such as his family. So I expect Vettel to retire. If not, then maybe Renault or McLaren, but I don't expect that.
Now, obviously, we know he's not going to McLaren because it was announced today that Ricciardo's making that switch from Renault, but it does leave an open seat at Renault. But interesting there that Uzziah thinks that Vettel should just retire. And he mentioned, obviously, Seb does have a young family. His latest edition arrived last year, so he's got a young one still. But are we forgetting he's only 32 years old? And
that's the thing.
Isn't that crazy that we're talking about a 32-year-old 4-time world champion retiring from Formula One? Is that just bonkers?
It is in one way because you expect drivers to continue into their late 30s, early 40s, even as Kimi is. So for a driver of Seb's quality to go so early does seem strange. But we've got Rapid Scorpion in the comments saying that Rosberg was just 31 when he retired from F1, and that was after just one title. Vettel retiring at 32 isn't unusual. I don't think his heart's in it anymore. And I think there's a certain argument that his priorities have, shifted. Much as Nico said after he won his title, that was enough for him. Like, he'd absolutely peaked and he couldn't see any way to better that. For Sebastian, he's again had this time during the pandemic and lockdown to spend time with his family that he wouldn't otherwise have got. And maybe that's made him sort of think a little bit more about, okay, what do I really want for my life? He's got 4 F1 world titles. He's enjoyed a stint with Ferrari, which is something that the majority of drivers out there would love to do one day. He's got all the money in the world that I'm sure he needs, so that's probably not an issue. So again, what is the real incentive to keep driving and keep racing? And I'm not really sure it's there for him anymore as it perhaps was once before. So I think him retiring, I think it is a genuine possibility. With regards to Leclerc, I mean, that I think did have a big impact in terms of how we would view Vettel and certainly in how Ferrari would view Vettel as well, because ultimately they're thinking, well, we've got this young driver who was expected to be the number 2, but came in from day one and pretty much immediately was on pace and better for most of the season. So therefore, what is the point of Sebastian? And that's a bit harsh, maybe. It would, I think, devalue what Sebastian Vettel can offer to any F1 team, Ferrari especially. But I think it has, definitely shifted the power enough that it's ultimately led to this exit. And I think now probably left Seb thinking, well, what am I going to do? Because I think if Leclerc hadn't been as good as he was last year, and if Ferrari hadn't, I think, moved around Leclerc as they did, I don't think Seb would be thinking about retirement right now.
Yeah, I think that's potentially valid. I think he thought that he was going to achieve a lot more with that team. But that's what I mean about this is a relationship of two halves, right? He's got to bring what he's got to the table, but Ferrari also have to supply him with what he requires and has essentially been promised. He was sold the dream, whether rightfully or wrongfully. He had the dream that he was going to emulate Michael Schumacher and be a champion at Ferrari. And I think, maybe we can speculate that dream looks like it's moved further and further away to a point where it's no longer achievable, and therefore maybe his motivation has dropped and his motivation has switched to his family. But I mean, the Rosberg point that you brought up, I don't want to get too much into it because I think, again, we could go off on a tangent as to why certain Formula One drivers retire. But I think that's a complete, Rosberg achieved his dream, right? Vettel hasn't. In theory, Vettel hasn't achieved his dream, which was to emulate Michael Schumacher in Ferrari. And I guess when you speak to Vettel, and I think a lot of journalists do hone in on, well, you wanted to be Michael Schumacher, right? You wanted to be the next Michael Schumacher, but you've not achieved it. And when his responses usually are a bit like, well, I don't actually, I'm a 4-time world champion. It would be nice, but is that the be all and end all of my F1 career? He seems very non-fussed about the numbers, very much like a Hamilton. Hamilton isn't. I mean, I guess it's easier for Hamilton to say because he's the one that holds all the records or is chasing.
He's got the numbers.
He's got the numbers behind him, but he always says, I'm not obsessed by the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. But I mean, what do you think about that in terms of the motivation having been shifted now?
I think I would disagree saying he's not achieved his dream. I mean, okay, he hasn't emulated Michael Schumacher, but I think that he's a 4-time world champion. I mean, you can't end an F1 career as a 4-time world champion and be disappointed. Like, that to me is, he's up there with the greats. Like, he's 3rd on the all-time wins list, only behind Hamilton and Schumacher. He's enjoyed so much success in F1. And okay, you can look at titles that slip through his grasp and say, oh, well, he should be a 5-time world champion or a 6-time world champion. But you could do that with any driver, really. So I think Seb, and as you say, like, he's very sort of down to earth about sort of the numbers game and things like that. And we know he has a rich appreciation for F1 history. I mean, he'll probably know exactly where he stands in all the record books right now. But I don't think that is any sort of motivation for him to keep going. Like, I think he will only keep going if he really sees that as being the ultimate goal in his life right now. And the impression is, as we've sort of discussed, and as lots of people are saying in the comments, that it is now his family. Like, that to him is where the priority now lies. And ultimately, if he wants to keep on racing, then fine. And I alluded to this on the Autosport podcast the other day, that you look at Kimi Räikkönen, who he's got a really sort of cushy situation right now. He's loving life with Alfa Romeo. He's still racing, still enjoying it, but he can spend so much time with his family as well in Switzerland, and it's ideal for what he wants. So I think that sort of ticks all the boxes. Seb, is there that same desire as Kimi's got to keep racing and keep going? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think he's enjoyed a great career, and I think there won't be any part of him that would not retire because he thinks, I've still got so much more I have to achieve before I'm really happy.
I mean, we're talking about retirement here. Maybe we don't know what he's going on to do just yet, and maybe we're gonna touch on that a little later in terms of what we think or what the audience thinks that he might be going on to do, because as I'm seeing a few suggestions in the chat already. But why don't we break it down, right? Because I think there's the argument, there's the two sides of the argument. One, that he is this brilliant all-time great 4-time world champion, and on the other side it was a complete fluke. It's because he was in the best car and he hasn't been able to emulate it again. So why don't we break it down into his achievements and his, well, what I'm calling his mistakes? maybe that's a little bit unfair. Maybe it's just more like driver error. Because if we think about when we're talking about world champions, world class drivers, we do tend to think about how many kind of how many errors they're making on track that are their fault and not the fault of the team or a manufacturing error or a mechanical failure or anything like that. So while I was doing my research for this pod, once I knew we were doing it, I actually came across this brilliant article by racingelite.com, which was made for Reddit, that actually lists all of Vettel's mistakes since he's joined Ferrari. So I won't read out the entire article, but let's just go through it. So Vettel joins Ferrari in 2015. And this article by Racing Elite says in 2015, Vettel made one mistake, and that was at the Mexican Grand Prix, where he touched Ricciardo at the start, got a puncture. After his tyre change, he then spins, and trying to go back at the pack, he outbrakes himself and crashes at turn 7. And actually, after the race, Ricciardo said that Vettel deserved the puncture because it was him that didn't leave any space. So, all right, out of an entire season, one mistake, maybe we can let him off with that one. Let's go 2016, right? 2 mistakes. So we're already doubled. We're already up on mistakes, right? First one, Malaysia. He outbrakes himself into turn 1 and crashes into Rosberg. DNFs. Brazil is the next one. He spins in the wet, thrashes his tyres, forced to pit, finishes behind a Force India. Ouch. So there was 2 mistakes in 2016. 2017, we're up to 3 mistakes. Azerbaijan, the famous one, where he intentionally hits Hamilton under the safety car and gets a 10-second stop-go penalty. This, I mean, 2017, in terms of Vettel's glaring errors, they were magic, because the next one is that famous Singapore incident with Raikkonen and Verstappen at the start. Now, people seem to think that, and do you think it's safe to say that that was Vettel's error in Singapore?
Oh, I don't know. I think there was blame all round on that one. I think, but you really, I remember that. I remember that race so well. Like, I remember how Mercedes were so adamant that they stood no chance of winning, and that Ferrari were going to ease to a 1-2 finish, and that they were all doing a rain dance, and then the rain came, and it obviously changed everything. But even so, you'd have thought Ferrari would have said, "Look, we're still 1-2 on the grid. Let's just really sort of think this through and plan out what we're going to do." And then it all just fell apart so quickly. So I think maybe a bit harsh to put all the blame on Vettel, but definitely some blame for that incident, and I think that was a huge sort of swinger in the title race that year.
100%, yeah, that I definitely will agree on. And whether that was kind of handed to Hamilton or not, because they did not look strong in that race, did they, Mercedes? So the third and final one for them that year was again Mexico. So but they have said that this is kind of between a racing incident and a Vettel mistake. So this was when Vettel touches Verstappen, hits Hamilton, damages his front wing, and ends up in P4. So it's again, like, it's a bit of a mixture between, are we going to put this as a total mistake on Vettel against his career, or are we going to say it was a racing incident? I'm not sure with that one. I think to be honest, for me, that was more of a racing incident. So
yeah,
maybe
I'd agree with that.
Maybe we'll take that one off. Now this is where it gets interesting, Luke, because now we're in 2018, right? So 2017, I think. Do you think it's safe to say that Vettel had a fighting chance to win the 2017 title?
He did, but there was less of a gap between Ferrari and Mercedes that year than there was in 2018. So I think if you took away Vettel's mistakes in 2017, I think he would have, as you say, had a fighting chance and a better chance of winning the title. But I don't think it would have been by any means guaranteed or a surefire thing. The same cannot be said of 2018.
Okay, so here we go. Here we go, right? Take a guess how many mistakes we are giving to Vettel in 2018.
There's about 6 or 7, I think.
Oh, Luke, you're too good at this. There are 7 mistakes in 2018, right? First one, First one, Azerbaijan. Safety car restart, tries to outbrake Bottas, goes deep, flat spots the tyres, and ends up in P4. Perez actually ends up overtaking him as well. So again, he finishes behind a Force India or Racing Point at that point. But so that was a he did seem to do these things where he would show that fighting spirit, but then just cock it all up on the actual eating of it, if you want to say that, overcooking it and then eating it. I'm clearly hungry and thinking about food. So next up, after Azerbaijan, we have the French Grand Prix when he crashed into Bottas at the start, sending him into a spin, damaging both cars, and ends up clawing back a P5. Austria, after that, impeding Carlos Sainz in Q2, earns him a 3-spot penalty. Given the tiny margin for victory, he probably could have won the race had he started from his original qualifying position. So he basically scuppered that race for himself. Ended up P3, but should have been a win. We've got then... I apologise in advance, Vettel fans and German racing fans, but we're going to talk about Germany 2018. Now, again... I think I've had discussions about this race on previous podcasts that I've been on, and was that a mistake? Was the German Grand Prix his mistake, or
yes.
was it? Okay, Luke is saying absolutely yes.
Sorry. Is there another opinion to that? I don't...
Well, I guess like what I've maybe discussed in the past is that, I mean, obviously there's had to be some error, but I mean those conditions were. It was like last year, really. They were just insane conditions, and being at the front in those conditions can often actually hand you a bit of a handicap. So, is that driver error? I mean, I guess we have to put it to that. So, okay.
No one else was spinning off. Sorry, but no one else was going off. Lewis Hamilton, as I'm seeing in the comments, people saying Lewis doesn't make those kind of mistakes. Yeah, he doesn't. Like,
it's true.
Think of wet races he's won. He just keeps going.
Germany last year, he wasn't staying with all 4 wheels on the track last time I checked.
True.
So this is what I mean, though. Like, it's really tough because when conditions are like that, yes, okay, it breaks down the men from the boys. You know, I've always said, definitely. You know, if and this is kind of people criticize me for not being a massive Bottas fan, but he's not particularly good in the wet. And that's kind of why I've always been like, yeah, you're all right, you're okay, but you're never going to be great if you can't drive brilliantly in the wet. All the greats have been wet weather drivers, and they've almost loved those conditions even more so than the dry conditions. So yeah, that for me is kind of a make or break. Anyway, let's move on because I'm not even halfway through his mistakes in 2018, sorry. So then we've got Italy, a Spinala move, trying to defend from Hamilton, and he spins it, and the argument is with a cooler head, could he have passed Hamilton and used Ferrari's superior speed? Because, I mean, that was the race, wasn't it? That everybody thought Ferrari was going to finally have won at Monza again. And he completely cocked it up, really, didn't he? I mean, so did Ferrari.
Yeah, so. And that then led to a situation where he eliminated himself from the lead fight. And then Kimi Räikkönen, who obviously took pole and was leading, he was left in a 2-in-1 situation. Mercedes used Bottas to back up Kimi and allow Lewis to get closer and make that overtake and win the race. So the argument is that, okay, even if Seb hadn't won that race, as long as he had stayed there with those lead drivers, there would have been a chance that Kimi would have won it. That would have taken points off Hamilton. Then that again sort of plays into that wider championship picture. So I think that was a really, really big error, because it did it cost them dearly just by not being there, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, I think I agree. So let's move on to Japan. He tries to overtake Verstappen at Spoon. I mean, who does that? Who tries to overtake at Spoon? Pushes both cars off the track. Vettel spins, and that was the very kind of famous bit where basically everyone almost took each other out because he wasn't looking where he was going, and then we had, was it Stroll going off? It was all a bit crazy. Ends up P6. Again, not where you expect a Ferrari to be finishing. So that was another mistake. And then the final, 2018 Grand Prix, Q3, 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 2018 round of mistakes, we're going to talk about the US Grand Prix. Obviously, I mean, this was the funny one where he spins, but they didn't make contact. He just did a spinala, and it was like, what happened there? And then Raikkonen obviously went on to win the race, which was almost even more degrading for Vettel because, I mean, as everyone said, it had been, what was it that Crofty said? It had been 100 years since Raikkonen had won.
113 years. That was it. Then quick correction. Oh, races. But it felt like it. It's like the meme, isn't it? It's been 84 years.
It's been 84 years since Raikkonen won. But yeah, again, like, arguably the clear number 2 in the team, looking like a hero, as Raikkonen did at Monza in a couple of rounds before. And actually, I think there was an additional mistake that we found for that US Grand Prix. I mean, he actually started that race with a 3-place grid penalty for having not slowed sufficiently under a red flag. So actually, technically, we're up to 8 mistakes there, unless we're going to.
And I would also throw in Singapore qualifying as well. He had a little touch with the wall, so it wasn't a big one. But again, that was a race where he could have got pole. So theoretically, if we're being really harsh, we got up to 9 in a single year, 9 mistakes.
Yikes. I mean, I guess the argument is that we've got a Max Verstappen that maybe not so much in the previous couple of seasons, but you know, we were all talking about him making ridiculous mistakes and crashing and causing collisions and getting himself out of a race. But you know, we don't expect to be talking about that many mistakes when we're talking about a 4+ world champion. And then if we look at last year, apparently just 4 mistakes. So technically, he was getting better. What we've got, Bahrain again, we had a spinala without contact. Canada, he goes wide. And well, obviously, I mean, dare I bring up Canada 2019? There are people still out there that are probably still hurting from it. So I'm very sorry if you are one of those fans that are still hurting from Canada. But I guess technically it was still a mistake from Seb. That then forced a penalty. Obviously, in Silverstone, there was the incident with Verstappen, which sent them both flying into the gravel. I mean, it was brilliant to watch, but not so good for Seb's career. Italy spins out again while chasing Bottas. So it's just, you know, there's just, the list goes on, really. I mean, it does sound like he was getting better, Luke. So is it unfair that he's now not able to defend himself? Maybe in 2020, if we ever get started, it'll be down to like no mistakes and he'll win the damn thing. Like, how are we to know? Do you think that's likely, or am I talking out of my proverbial other end?
Well, I think we'll see. I think Seb, as we'll get on to, he still has great quality. I think he can still be a race winner. I think he could still be world champion if you gave him the right car and everything went okay. But as you rightly say, we should not be seeing that many mistakes from a driver. And it just kind of seemed like things built. And I guess sort of maybe, I know some sort of mental doubt came into it as well. Like, okay, am I pushing too hard? Am I not pushing hard enough? What should I be doing? And that then leads to these kind of errors that, a 4-time world champion should not be making. Again, Lewis Hamilton doesn't make those kind of errors on such a regular basis. He's able to keep a cool head. He's able to push the limit, but he just stays so cool under pressure. Seb, it just wasn't that same sort of composure, I think, through the last sort of 2-3 seasons. So it's, it's definitely, it's just not what you need. It really isn't. And ultimately, you look at someone like Charles Leclerc, who's in very similar situations in only his second F1 season as well, and he was making none of those errors.
It's a good point as well. It's a good point. I don't think we're going to get through this without kind of a comparison against his much younger and brighter looking. I don't mean brighter as in shiny, not brighter as in intelligence, because it's fair to say that Seb is an intelligent man. But let's listen. We've got a little clip in from Tracy, one of our listeners. Let's see what Tracy had to say, because I think she pretty much touches on a lot of the points that we've just covered.
It was inevitable, really, that Sebastian Vettel was going to leave Ferrari. He'd been lagging behind his teammate last season, and he's been making silly mistakes at crucial times in races over the last few years. I don't think he'll stay in F1, as I can't see him going to any other team, as I would assume he'd think it was taking a step backwards in his career. We know that Daniel Ricciardo is going to McLaren, so I've got a sneaking suspicion that Sainz is probably definitely going to take his spot at Ferrari. But we'll have to wait and see on that side of things. But I knew there was no way Ricciardo would go to Ferrari because he's just way too smiley for that team.
I mean, interesting analysis about why Ricciardo didn't get that seat. But yeah, and obviously a lot of these clips that you guys sent in were sent to us before the news broke this morning. So don't worry, don't start attacking people in the comments going, "Did you not hear the news?" That's our bad, not their bad. But again, quite a scathing. I'm not seeing much defense for Vettel here right now from fans.
Yeah, which is surprising because Vettel's got a really big fan base on Twitter. Like when the news was announced, I saw so many fans like really upset because their favorite driver, the driver they've been following for years and years and years, is leaving Ferrari and potentially leaving F1 altogether. Yeah, and I probably would have expected a little bit more defense of him. And when we were planning this, I said, well, no, I do want to defend him to a point because he is still a four-time world champion, as I keep saying. He is still, and I think we saw this in Singapore most notably last year, he can still win races at a canter with some brilliant driving when the stars align and when everything is working well for him. But there's sort of that spark that we saw in the early Red Bull years from 2010 to 2013. That's missing. Like that's gone completely. And I think we saw Red Bull really rallied around him, and I don't think Ferrari quite have in the same way over the past couple of years, and particularly last year. I thought Tracy made a good point about Ricciardo saying, "Oh, he's too smiley to go to Ferrari." And you do kind of think of all these drivers. You think of Vettel, you think of Alonso, you think of I guess even Kimi to a certain point, Alain Prost in the 90s as well. They go to Ferrari with all this big dreams and the hopes of being able to sort of tame the prancing horse and restore it to its former glories and really make a good thing happen. And so few of them actually make that work. I mean, Michael Schumacher did incredibly, but the team, I think, operated in such a different way. But unfortunately, I think Vettel he's going to be remembered similar to Alonso, similar to Prost, that this could have been really, really mega, but it just wasn't at the end of the day.
It's quite tough for drivers, isn't it? I think it's so situational, isn't it? It's not all down on to you, is it? It's not all based on your talent. Your talent obviously is a massive influence in how your career progresses, but you're dependent on the team, you're dependent on the car, you're dependent against like who you're up against. Because I mean, I guess that's the biggest criticism that a lot of people say about, well, you know, how can you be a world champion when you're going up against people like Lewis Hamilton, who might arguably be one of the greatest Formula One drivers we've ever seen, or, you know, in the eras of Senna and Prost, how are you ever going to be remembered? I don't know if you've been watching The Last Dance documentary on Netflix about the Michael Jordan and co at the Chicago Bulls, but I guess it's a similar environment, right? If you've got a Michael Jordan, how on earth are you going to shine when you've got that to go up against? So I guess, are we being too critical of Vettel, and should we just, I mean, this is your moment, Luke. I want you to go full on Vettel fanboy if you want. Let's take a look at what he's achieved and why actually he shouldn't have this kind of almost pity candle going out end that, as you mentioned, like the likes of Alonso maybe had by kind of getting a bit bullish and ended up in McLaren and at the back of the field before he retired. So why does he not deserve that, Luke?
Okay, I will firstly say I'm not a fanboy. I'm just passionate. Sorry. No, I mean, Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari. Now, when this was first announced in 2014, that was, everyone thought, right, this really makes sense. Like, this is a driver who looked up to Michael Schumacher, wanted to emulate him. We saw the sort of passing of the baton between them when Schumacher retired at the end of 2012. And finally, it was inevitable. Like, for a lot of drivers, I think it was true of Alonso. I think it would have been true of Ayrton Senna. It was true of Prost. They all they have to go and have a stint at Ferrari at some point. So Seb got that chance. And 2015, immediately they hit the ground running. They knew that car was no way going to compete with Mercedes, but they still took 3 good wins that year. And it was an impressive season. 2016, a bit more difficult, but Ferrari was sort of putting things more towards the 2017 regulation change. And when that came together, that really came together right. Like, that car was on a par with the Mercedes, at least through the first half of the season. And Seb won in Australia that year and was very, very quick throughout the year. And I think, obviously, we saw the mistakes that we talked about, but Ferrari, they just didn't quite have the legs to keep up with Mercedes through that period, really. So that, I think, a lot of credit has to go to Mercedes. And through all of this, as you say with the Last Dance reference, we've got to recognise just how great that Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton partnership has been through this period. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are as a driver and how good your team is. If you're up against that, unless you are 10 out of 10 every single weekend, you're not going to win the championship, simply. 2018, I think that's when this was the real high point for Vettel and Ferrari. And Vettel could have won the first 4 races of that season. Like, if he'd have won that, then you'd have thought, okay, well, there's no way back for Lewis in this title fight, surely. But he won in Australia and Bahrain. China, he had the battle with Bottas, then the clash with Verstappen under the safety car. And then Baku, as we talked about, there was another safety car that turned the race. He made a mistake, finished 4th. But if he'd have swept the first 4 races, you'd be saying, right, okay, well, this is Seb's title to lose, surely. Even so, through that season, Ferrari was still on pace, and Vettel was still week in, week out performing so well. We saw in Monaco, he took an excellent win there, and not in Monaco. That was Ricciardo. My mistake. But he was on form for so much of that season. He was excellent, and the high point came in Germany on the Saturday, not the Sunday, when he took pole position. Hamilton was 14th. He had an 8-point lead in the championship at that point, I believe. And I remember I was out for dinner with some Mercedes friends that night. And one of them, I can't repeat exactly what they said, but they said, I hate losing. And I don't think we're going to win again this year. And that is how scared Mercedes were of this Vettel-Ferrari partnership, because that Ferrari was so good and Vettel was looking so strong at that point. And then he crashed at Hockenheim. And that, I think, was the turning point in this whole partnership. And I think from then on, Seb, he's not been the same since. Like, he's taken what he won at Spa and won at obviously in Singapore last year, but since then there's not been the same kind of, I think, perfection and same kind of spirit even. But I think we still need to recognise just how good he has been. We saw in Canada last year, up to his mistake, how well he could hold a race and dominate a race, even with Lewis Hamilton all over the back. We saw in Singapore, when I know obviously a lot of Leclerc fans were very disappointed that he didn't win the race because he looked on course to do so. But ultimately, that was all Vettel. Like, Vettel got a brilliant undercut, made it work, and Ferrari had to protect the 1-2 instead of what would have been a 1-4 finish. So it made sense, and Seb was on pace and he earned it. And it's those kind of performances that really make you think, yeah, like he's still got that spark. He can still fight with the absolute top guys in F1. And I think that Ferrari, if they said, look, we want the 2 quickest drivers we could possibly have for 2021, Sebastian Vettel would still be racing for them next year, because he is quicker than Carlos Sainz. He's quicker than Daniel Ricciardo. There are very few drivers out there who you would say, I'd rather have them in the car than Seb. But it comes down to so much more than that, I think. It comes down to what Seb wants. It comes down to what the right fit for Ferrari is moving forward. And ultimately, that sort of made the land for his departure. But no, to me, I think he's still one of the quickest 3 drivers on the grid, I would say. And that has been a very long run, so I'll pass back to you now.
No, it's good. It's good. That's what we wanted. We need somebody in his corner. And I'm gonna back. He's the 3rd time all winner. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that I phrased that really bad. He's 3rd on the all-time winners list is what I meant to say. You don't get there by kind of like sneaking in and going, oh, I'm all right here. And I think a lot of people that say, well, the Red Bull years were a bit of a fluke, and it was just lucky that he was there. He still had to. I mean, his first title, he didn't just cruise there. He had to win. He had to earn. He had to fight. And then he had Webber, who, again, maybe people would say that's not really a comparison, but he did have to fight Webber to get there, and have that internal struggle, as having Webber as a teammate who was clearly unhappy and saying that Vettel was doing all this stuff internally that wasn't fair and all that kind of thing. But you also touched on the fact that Ferrari have an obligation to the driver as well. And actually, what is the future of Ferrari without Vettel? Because they've just swapped out, as I said, a driver who's 3rd on the all-times winners list, who has 4 world titles, for a guy who has 1 podium that he didn't even get to stand on himself until way after the race was finished. Arguably not his fault, but still. And who has never stayed in a senior team for longer than a season. It's quite a risk from Ferrari, do we not think? I mean, I don't want to talk about Sainz too much because this podcast is about Vettel, but it seems like, has Ferrari just completely and utterly lost its mind in terms of like what its future is, or what is that? Because you've got some interesting stats as well about this new pairing as well that we were talking about before this pod.
Yeah, so we're going into 2021, assuming Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz, probably not going to be Sainz, but assuming neither of them win the World Championship this year, it'll only be the second time since 1995 that Ferrari haven't had a World Champion in their lineup. The last being 2007 when they had Kimi Räikkönen and Felipe Massa, and obviously Kimi went on to win the title that year. So it is a hugely inexperienced lineup, and yeah, you have to go a long way back, I think, to when Ferrari didn't have such an inexperienced lineup. 1992, you had Sean Lacey and Ivan Capelli. They had no wins between them, and obviously that was a very different era for Ferrari. They were nowhere near, I think, as competitive and as strong as they are today. But that was, I think that was a long time ago.
They had 8 double DNFs that season with Alesi and Capelli.
Blimey.
8 double DNFs. Yikes.
That's pretty bad. But it does show. Yeah, exactly. And it does show that ultimately Ferrari, they've always looked for experience. They've never gone with, okay, let's roll the dice and get this young guy in, until last year when they said, Charles Leclerc, yeah, it's only his second season, but let's put him in the car. Youngest Ferrari driver since Pedro Rodriguez, I believe. And then with Leclerc and Sainz next year, it'll be Ferrari's youngest lineup in 50 years, which is crazy. But that just shows how traditional Ferrari have been in their approach to their drivers. They've always wanted, he's won X many world championships, let's get him in. They've wanted the Vettels, the Alonsos, the Raikkonens, the Prosts, the Schumachers. They've not gone for, let's get this guy out of the midfield and give him a shot, which is why I think Sainz's selection it makes a lot of sense, but it's also surprising that they could have gone for Daniel Ricciardo, a guy with 7 Grand Prix victories and arguably world champion material, but instead have gone for a guy who has been impressive in the midfield, but hasn't exactly blown us away and been taking wins in a Toro Rosso a la Vettel back in 2008.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's a good point. I think, again, like, not to get too sidetracked, I think we could go down a whole rabbit hole in terms of like what the 2021 grid is starting to look like. But Sainz for me, actually, last year was my driver of the season. I'm super impressed with that boy. I think he's done a lot to impress. But even I was shocked that he was going to Ferrari. It's still like, yeah, Sainz is great, and one day he's going to get picked up by a higher up team and not be in the midfield. But like in 2021, and in a Ferrari, like, what just happened? How did this happen?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I guess that's what we're getting to. Has Ferrari's priorities changed alongside Vettel's, and therefore was this actually a good thing for Seb to step away? If Ferrari aren't interested in investing in the experience that he has, and what he can offer in terms of that experience, and the fact that he's a 4-time world champion, is that not a good move? If he's not going to be prioritized, this young buck is going to be essentially the Ferrari's future. That can't have been an easy situation to try and exist in when you're not the priority.
No, definitely not. And I think that Seb is fully understanding of that. And through all of this, he said it's never been about the money. And I truly believe that. Again, he's not someone who is materially driven. He did a great Autosport interview earlier this year where he said that it's not about money for me, it's about happiness, and he wants to be happy. And it would have been about the status within the team. It would have been about his parity with the clerk. It would have been about what do I mean to Ferrari? Like you said earlier about it being a two-sided relationship. He wants to know how valued he is, how loved he is. And that would have been the key thing to him. So I think to sort of realize that things aren't quite working out, and as you say, his own priorities perhaps shifting as well, that does make it a more amicable exit. I mean, I think back to 2014 when Fernando Alonso left the team, and it was so different. Like, it was so nasty and sour by the end of it, and no matter how much Alonso said, I've loved my time here and whatever, the way that all ended, with Ferrari really sort of having to work their way around to say, right, how can we get rid of Fernando and get Vettel in this car? And Alonso all the while sort of thinking, I can't be doing with this anymore, whatever. It really wasn't nice. But it'll be a nice end to the partnership. And I think Seb has sort of thought, instead of being accepting that I'm not going to beat Leclerc. He is now Ferrari's star, and sort of being this, I don't know, rather disgruntled mistress in this relationship, perhaps. He's now thinking, actually, no, I'd rather just get out of it completely and go and do something else, which is, I think, fair play to him for doing that and having maybe the, I guess, sort of the maturity to say that. Christian Horner spoke yesterday following the announcement. He said that Vettel is a very principled guy and he's all about integrity. And I think that Seb, through all of this, his integrity cannot be questioned. And I think that really does need to be recognised and applauded. And I think that he, ultimately has sort of gone, well, look, where is my focus now? What's my priority now? And if he doesn't want it, he's not going to just make do. He'll get what he really wants.
Absolutely. So I guess, do we dare say what we think Vettel should do next? What do you think Vettel should do next in order, maybe, as you've said, to avoid that kind of pity exit from Formula One? I hate that. I don't think there are many drivers that deserve that kind of, off you go then. Like, we want, I know, I guess, like, even though Fernando Alonso's F1 career probably didn't end in the way that he would have hoped it had, I mean, he's still got a pretty beautiful send-off, but I don't think I don't know if donuts on the Aston Marina start-finish line are really going to make up for the fact that you didn't win as many world titles as maybe you thought you deserved. But there we go. But there's still that pity attached, isn't there? So how does Vettel avoid that now? Does he join another team? Do you think he can join another team, or should he just kind of bow out and go, look, guys, I've driven for the guys in red, I'm out, mic drop, see you later?
I think it has got to be the right opportunity. I think it's got to be a deal that speaks to the stuff that we've been saying. Like, Seb doesn't want to go to a team where it's like, oh yeah, we might be good in a few years and you might have this young driver and we might sort of put everything behind him, or I don't know. I think he'll want a project to stay in F1 that he really believes in, and that they can come to him and say, look, we're going to offer you something very, very different here, and something that speaks to everything that you're looking for. If he can't get that, then I think he will retire. Whether he'll call it a retirement or not, I'm not sure. I mean, Fernando Alonso, he used the word retirement when I first spoke to him after the announcement was out. But now, like we're talking about, he could come back to Renault in 2021, and he's always sort of saying, I might come back. So the word retirement, I think...
That riles me up the wrong way. That does. It's like I can't help thinking he's just like, I still want to be relevant. So maybe I'll come back. I like to think that Seb would avoid that. Like, he would say either, look, I'm done completely, or he'd say, look, I've not got a seat for next year, but if there's a good opportunity in 2-3 years time, I would like to come back. So we'll see. But I think that... No, go on, Luke. Go on, Luke.
So I'm going to put quite a spicy opinion out here. And I said this
here we go.
Yesterday. I think that the Aston Martin Racing Point project could be something that could give Seb what he wants.
I think a lot of people are agreeing with you. I'm seeing Jake Kurtz says a brand new fresh project at Aston Martin or retirement. Zania is saying Toto plus Vettel plus Stroll's dollars equals Aston Martin top team. So go on, Luke, give us your... I interrupted you, but I just saw that a lot of people are on your side. So what? Give us your reasons, Luke.
No, I just think that it could work perfectly. I mean, Lawrence Stroll is out to build something great. Like, he doesn't want to build a team that is going to be bumbling about at the back of the grid. He wants them to be winning. Aston Martin, that great link up, that great manufacturer back in F1, that's a really, really cool thing. Vettel is a real sucker for history. He loves stuff like that. So if you say, look, Seb, we got a chance for you here. You could be the man who sort of takes Aston Martin back to the front of the F1 grid. We know we're not going to be competitive in 2021 or 2022, but we've got a budget cap coming in the future. We are going to be able to operate to the absolute limit of that budget cap. We've got a new factory coming. We've got the money basically to really put the team together that you want. And if you think back to the Schumacher heyday when they had Ross Brawl and Jean Todt, Rory Byrne, and they sort of built this great team around Schumacher. And I think that's what we all expected Ferrari to do around Vettel. But if Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll come along and say, look, Seb, we could do this with you. We could make this happen. And you may not be winning races tomorrow, but in 3, 4, 5 years' time, you could be doing that. Why not? Like, he's 32, as we've been saying. Like, why not say, look, 4 or 5 years' time, you've got a good chance to do that and to really be part of something very new and very exciting. I think that could be really, really cool. So I think that that's me right now. That looks way more viable than Renault or Mercedes or anywhere else. That would be my. I would love to see it. I would really love to see it. The fan in me would think that would be a really cool thing.
I'm going to put a spanner in the works, though, Luke.
Oh no.
As Ashley Ball says, Perez has a long-standing contract and Stroll's his son. So how's Vettel going to go to Aston Martin?
Lance doesn't have a long-term contract.
Do you really think Lawrence is going to kick his son out of the team?
I'm not saying any more on that.
Oh!
I look. Come on. Look, if you want the absolute two best drivers out of that, Checo and Seb, that could work.
No, I agree with you. I think that's a great pairing, but maybe we're going to get. I mean, I really hope Netflix is in the Stroll office when Lawrence boots Lance out of his seat, and
we shall see.
I really hope that makes it to Netflix. But I guess, like, on that, shall we leave it there?
I think that's probably best.
I think it's been, honestly, guys, it's been great having you watch along live and send in your comments. It's provided such great feedback. We've absolutely loved it. This podcast will be available to watch again once we've finished, and also to listen to on our podcast platforms. And this is coming at you every single week. Whether we're live every week, we'll have to discuss, see how it's gone today, and maybe we'll do it live again. But it will be coming to you every week. It will be available on podcast platforms every week. So make sure that you subscribe, that you like, that you comment below and let us know how we've done. If you liked it, if you're listening, definitely give us a 5-star review, because that's what we deserve, obviously. And give us some feedback on there as well. And then make sure you're following across social at Autosport on all handles. And then myself and Luke also, we're always looking for your feedback and your opinions on this show, because we love doing it, but it's for you guys. So we want it all about you. Look out for the next topic where we'll be asking for your unpopular opinions. And join us again when you can. And I hope you've enjoyed it. But from myself, it's a goodbye. And from Luke,
Goodbye also.
all right.